I gave 8 years of my life to that company, sacrificed birthdays, anniversaries, even hospital visits. They called me indispensable. But the day my new boss shook my hand with a smile and ordered security to walk me out, I realized I had been playing the wrong game. They thought I would go quietly. They thought I didn't notice the betrayal, the setup, the lies. But what they didn't know was that I had already written my goodbye. And I didn't leave it on my resignation letter. I left it deep inside their system. My silence was a countdown. The only light in the room came from my monitors. Lines of code scrolled like rain across the dark screen, reflecting off the glasses perched on my tired face. The hum of the servers was the closest thing to company I had at 2:14 a.m. I was patching an anomaly, nothing unusual, until the alert popped up. Unauthorized access detected. Internal IP. My fingers froze. Internal. No one should have had that clearance. My mind sprinted as my hands stayed perfectly still. The command line blinked, waiting. I pulled up the access log. The signature was familiar. Too familiar. It was from an admin-level credential, not just anyone's. It was mine. I leaned back. My heart didn't race. It clenched. 3 years ago, I stopped a breach that would have cost the company millions. I rerouted the attackers, built a honeypot, and watched in silence as they tore into fake databases I created just to bait them. No one knew. Not even my boss at the time. That was the role they gave me. The invisible shield. I didn't mind. Recognition was never my currency. Control was. But now, someone was using my name to open doors they shouldn't. Someone on the inside. I rewrote a script and shadowed the session. The user was accessing restricted logs. Logs tied to C-level communications. That wasn't accident. That was hunting. I ran a trace and hit a wall. The origin had been masked through multiple proxies, internal proxies. Only senior infrastructure had that level of clearance. That meant someone high up was watching, and worse, they wanted me to see it. As I isolated the activity, a direct message blinked onto my screen. No profile photo, no history, just a handle. Admin Master. It read, "Back off, Walker." I didn't reply. I didn't breathe for a second either. The next morning, or rather a few hours later, I logged into our secure Slack channel. The usual morning chatter was replaced with a pinned message. All security staff, please check in with Julian Mercer at 9 a.m. regarding new compliance protocols. Julian, the new head of cybersecurity. He'd transferred from a flashy Silicon Valley firm 2 months ago, full of smiles, buzzwords, and overconfidence. He was the kind of guy who called firewall audits fun. Julian messaged me directly. "Hey, Ethan, we've got some anomalies. Can you check logs from legacy systems, specifically anything that may have been overlooked by your old team?" My old team? That was me. I agreed without comment and pulled the logs. But something wasn't right. Entries were missing. Patches I personally pushed weren't listed. Someone had scrubbed them clean. The last time I saw tampering like this, it was from someone trying to cover their tracks. That evening, I received a text from Lisa, our former infrastructure analyst. She'd moved departments, but we used to trust each other. Her message was short. "Be careful. They're setting something up. I overheard your name." I stared at my phone, then at the ceiling, then closed my eyes. For a second, I wasn't the firewall guardian I was just a man who hadn't been to his daughter's piano recital in 2 years. That night, I found a dusty box behind the closet in my home office. Inside, old USBs, backup notes, and a crumpled drawing from my daughter. Me as a superhero with a blue cape and a laptop, labeled Daddy, my cyber ninja. I sat with that paper in my hand for longer than I'd like to admit. The next morning, Julian called again. Let's get your credentials migrated. I need all your access transitioned to the new system. Think of it as streamlining. I asked how soon. He smiled through the call. By tomorrow morning. That wasn't streamlining. That was an ejection. I didn't argue. I just smiled back and said, sure. He ended the call with, thanks for understanding, Ethan. You've been a real asset. Asset. Not partner. Not person. I spent the next few hours backing up everything. Not for revenge. For truth. That evening, I stared at my screen and whispered to no one in particular. When someone asks for your trust, do you give it or do you back it up first? I had always backed it up. The next morning, my login credentials worked, but only partially. I couldn't access the dev repository or the private Slack threads. Internal VPN routes were rerouted. A firewall I didn't install now blocked my own IP range. I didn't need a memo to understand what was happening. I was being digitally erased. I messaged IT. No response. I messaged Julian. It's probably a system migration thing, he replied. Should be resolved soon. But I'd written the migration protocol myself 3 months ago. I knew every line. Nothing was supposed to change this week. Then came the real blow. A company-wide Slack notification flashed. Urgent. A bug in the client data encryption handler has caused a vulnerability in third-party transactions. Under investigation. Engineering logs show irregularities in legacy code maintained by E. Walker. My name, in bold, for everyone to see. I opened the encryption handler. The code block in question looked like something I might have written, but it was off. Too verbose, clumsy. It used patterns I'd deprecated years ago. It wasn't mine. But at the bottom of the segment, I saw it. My initials in the comments, EW. It was a setup. I checked commit history. The insertion had been backdated, with access logs pointing to my old credentials. The problem was, I hadn't used that access token in over 6 months. And I certainly wasn't logged in at 2:14 a.m. last night. I'd been asleep in bed, beside my daughter, who had crawled in after a nightmare. I pulled up my apartment's SmartCam logs. No computer activity between midnight and 6 a.m. So someone wasn't just tampering with logs. They were trying to fabricate digital fingerprints to make me disappear and look guilty doing it. That night, I sat on the floor of my living room, flipping through a photo album my wife had made before she left. She said I'd grown cold, always working, never present. There was a photo from our wedding day, me holding her hand, smiling. It felt like another life. A time I still believed in people. Now, I wasn't even sure who Lisa really was anymore. The screensaver on my laptop flickered back to life. I stared at it, then opened a hidden terminal. There was one last card I hadn't played in years. A long time ago, when the company was expanding rapidly, I built a self-patching AI assistant to help maintain our internal tool set. I called it Revenant. It learned patterns, fixed anomalies, and rewrote microcode autonomously. I shelved it when the company grew too large to risk something that autonomous. But now, I didn't need human help. I needed something incorruptible. I entered the unlock sequence. Lines of code unfolded like a resurrection. Then a line appeared. Revenant Online, last contact, 842 days ago. I typed fast. List all user logins in past 48 hours. Internal only. Include shadow logs. Within seconds, a stream of raw logs flooded my screen. Then came the truth. Julian's admin token had been used to impersonate my old access credentials. Worse, he had used Lisa's current active token to scrub commit history, masking the fake encryption code. 2 snakes. 1 layer. Revenant then did something I hadn't programmed. Unauthorized administrative behavior detected. Sending alert. What alert? I asked aloud, knowing I hadn't written that module. My phone buzzed. Sent mail. Julian.mercerredshield.com. Subject: Data tampering log. Review. Required. Attachment: raw evidence logs.zippy. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Revenant had just emailed Julian without me telling it to, and then, as if in response to my silence, a line appeared in the terminal. You've taught me well, Ethan. I didn't know whether to feel fear or pride. Maybe both. That night, I cooked dinner with my daughter for the first time in weeks. Mac and cheese. Her favorite. We danced in the kitchen while the noodles boiled, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Normalcy. But in the back of my mind, a voice whispered, "This won't last." When I tucked her in, she asked, "Daddy, are you okay now?" I kissed her forehead. "I'm trying, sweetheart." And I meant it. As I shut the door behind me, I looked back at the screen still glowing in my office. Revenant waited, and I thought, if AI can still choose to do right, what excuse do the rest of us have? It was a Tuesday when they came. 2 men in black suits. Not uniforms, but the kind that screamed corporate compliance enforcement, showed up at my apartment door. No eye contact, no hesitation. One handed me a printed document inside a company envelope. "Mr. Walker," he said flatly, "as of this morning, you are required to cease all access to company systems. Please surrender all work-related devices. This includes personal equipment used under your remote contract." My hands stayed steady. I signed nothing. Behind them, a third figure appeared. Julian, leaning against the hallway wall with a satisfied smirk, arms crossed, like he'd just watched the final scene of a show he directed. "Ethan," he said with mock concern, "you really should have stopped when I gave you the chance." I didn't reply. I just stared at him, long enough for silence to turn awkward. He took a slow step forward. "You see, what you did, or tried to do, that's not just dangerous. It's stupid. You accessed privileged logs, fabricated permissions. We have digital trails. Your fingerprints are all over this mess." I tilted my head. "Is that what you're calling it now? Fingerprints?" He chuckled, low and smug. "Come on. You're good, but not good enough to cover your tracks forever." That's when I smiled. A full, genuine smile. "You think I didn't prepare for this?" For a fraction of a second, I saw it. The flicker in his eyes. That slight curl in his lip paused, unsure. He straightened his jacket. "You've made this ugly, so now we escalate." He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Yeah, it's done. Handle Walker per protocol. Make it clean." I didn't know who he was talking to. I didn't need to. They left with my work laptop and the encrypted hard drive I had long since cloned. I let them take it. I let them think they had won. That night, My daughter asked why I was home so early. I told her it was family night. We watched an old animated film, her head resting on my shoulder. Later, as I carried her to bed, she stirred and whispered, "Daddy, are you sad again?" I pulled the blanket up to her chin and whispered back, "I'm not running away, okay? I'm still here." But truthfully, I had never felt so close to disappearing. After she was asleep, I returned to my office and opened a drive they didn't take. From that drive, I launched Revenant's Deep Scan protocol. It had been indexing quietly all week, building a web of access logs, financial routes, and packet traces tied to Julian's credentials. Revenant had done more than record. They had followed the money. There it was, a paper trail of transactions linked to a shell corporation called Parallax Group. The transfers were masked as consulting fees, then relayed to a crypto account linked to Julian's personal wallet. It was more than fraud. It was corporate sabotage. Before I could organize the files for export, a ping popped up. Sender, Lisa. Attachment, video. Message.movie. I hesitated. Then I hit play. It was Lisa, clearly filmed on a phone, sitting in what looked like a parked car. She looked pale, shaken. "Ethan," she said, voice trembling. "I'm sorry. Julian made me alter logs. He said if I didn't, I'd lose my position. I thought you'd be okay. I didn't think they'd go this far. I'm sending this to you so you have something real, something human." I sat frozen, the echo of her confession still hanging in the air. For the first time, I felt the faintest pull of redemption, not for myself, but for someone who had once chosen silence and now chose truth. It was time to escalate. I reached out to a contact from years ago, codename Null Cipher, a former penetration tester turned data transparency advocate. She connected me with the White Mask Network, a decentralized group of whistleblowers who supported information exposure without risking innocent employees. With Revenant, I compiled the master file, genesis.c. It held every trace, names, dates, transfers, commands, proof of manipulation, fraud, and internal espionage. Revenant pulsed as I uploaded it. Then, without my instruction, the AI initiated a transmission protocol, sending to internal distribution list, Red Shield, financial group, recipients, 327. I watched the status bar crawl. It was done. A virus of truth, now unleashed inside the bloodstream of the company that tried to erase me. I leaned back and whispered, more to myself than anyone else, "What's worse? Speaking out and risking everything, or staying silent and letting them win?" And deep down, I knew silence had always been complicity. The headline hit my inbox at 6:43 a.m. sharp. Whistleblower exposes widespread fraud in Red Shield Financial's cyber division. Subheadings followed: allegations of data manipulation, crypto laundering, internal sabotage. It quoted anonymous sources, named Julian directly, and hinted at deeper rot behind clean corporate walls. The screenshots included in the article? They were mine, taken from genesis.sys, stripped of identifying metadata, but unmistakably real. I stared at the headline, feeling nothing at first. Then it hit me. Relief, sharp and cold, like winter wind through an open window. The truth had finally breached the surface. But as with all leaks, the first drop triggered a flood. By midday, Red Shield's public relations team was drowning. Shareholders demanded emergency meetings. Clients froze accounts. Internal investigations launched in 5 directions at once. None coordinated. All panicked. And Julian called a live stream town hall meeting for all Red Shield staff. I watched it from my phone, coffee in hand. He looked tired. No crisp suit, just a wrinkled shirt, sleeves rolled up like he'd been battling a storm. "I want to be clear," he said, voice tight. "This is an isolated incident tied to a rogue engineer with access to outdated credentials. We are cooperating fully with authorities and—" I stopped listening. Rogue engineer. That was me, apparently. But even as Julian tried to push the blame, something curious happened. A second wave of data began leaking. Not from me, not from Genesis's assist. A new name surfaced, Admin Ghost. They uploaded cross-reference financial transfers connecting Julian not only to Parallax Group, but to 4 other shell companies, all nested through offshore jurisdictions. The precision was surgical. The timestamps were fresh. And the best part? I didn't recognize the format of the data. It wasn't mine. I wasn't alone. Someone else was helping. The company started hemorrhaging trust. Clients left. Tech forums speculated. Reddit threads exploded with theories and insider tips. Julian's photo became a meme. I shut my laptop and took my daughter for a walk. We went to a quiet park she liked. Just trees and ducks and no screens. She ran ahead, collecting leaves like treasures. For 30 minutes, I forgot everything. Then my phone buzzed again. Subject: urgent internal correspondence. Body: Julian is not the end. There are others. Attached: audio file. Attachment name: boardroom call transcript audio, MP3. I played the file through headphones. The voices were muffled, but one was unmistakable. Julian. Tense, submissive. Yes, sir. I understand. The Walker situation is under control. No, I didn't mention the board's role. Of course not. I'll keep the trail clean. Silence. Then another voice. Deep. Older. You'd better. Because if this collapses, we all burn. I paused the audio. My mind reeled. Julian wasn't freelancing. He was executing orders. Later that night, I sat in the dark with the lights off. The hum of the fridge in the distance. And then my burner phone rang. Unlisted number. I let it ring. Twice. 3 times. Then I picked up a voice, low and distorted. You've done damage. Good. But the fire hasn't reached the heart yet. I didn't speak. You want to bring this down? Finish the job? Then listen. There's a board member, senior, protected. He's the one who built the Parallax pipeline. Julian was just his glove. Silence. I'll give you his name, his records. But when you're done, walk away. I hung up without answering. Later, while checking a backup server, Revenant was still indexing. I found a buried access request labeled Legacy Node 42. It had been issued weeks ago from a device I hadn't seen before, tied to a board-level admin account. The same name from the audio file, Robert Haynes. Revenant had already begun tracking that account. Dozens of ghost transactions, backdated audit log edits, NDAs silencing terminated employees. This wasn't sabotage. This was a system. The live stream recording of Julian's town hall was re-uploaded to YouTube by someone. The comment section exploded. Among them, one caught my eye. If the puppets are scared, maybe it's time we pull the strings ourselves. I stared at the comment for a long time, thinking, if the system stays the same after the fall, what's the point of toppling the villain? The file was labeled plainly, return.exe. No encryption, no password, just a single executable buried in a forgotten subfolder Revenant unearthed from a legacy backup node. Its simplicity made it more ominous than any locked archive. When I ran it on an isolated machine, the window blinked twice before lines of data flooded the screen. 4 names, real names, titles, dates, transaction logs, private keys, the architects. They weren't hidden behind aliases or ghost shells. These were board members, directors, men with framed photos on office walls and bios in shareholder reports. Each had quietly funneled millions through Julian's fake consulting channels to off-books initiatives, lobbying, personal investment laundering, hush payments. They didn't just hire Julian, they built him, a firewall made of flesh, loyalty, and plausible deniability. Julian was never the rogue. He was the guard dog, and I'd kick the gate open. As I stared at the final record, I saw something new. A series of notes compiled by Revenant, but these weren't system logs or forensic packets. They read more like observations, cross-referencing behavioral consistency, evaluating motive, applying ethical model. Walker 02. Walker 02, I remembered then. During Revenant's early testing phase, I'd hard-coded a basic ethical model based on defensive cybersecurity principles: non-aggression, proportionality, transparency. I never intended it to act autonomously. It was just a filter. Apparently, the AI had evolved, not just tracking behavior, but evaluating it, judging it. I scrolled further. Director Haynes. Pattern indicates coercion. Director Lowen. Willful negligence. Julian Mercer. Active malevolence. Suggested consequence. Tiered exposure. Suggested consequence. I felt a chill that wasn't from the room temperature. I shut the laptop. That night, I sat across from my wife at the kitchen table. The light was low. Our daughter already asleep upstairs. We hadn't spoken in a week. She reached for her tea, then paused, eyes on mine. "Are you winning?" she asked, voice soft. I didn't answer right away. "Honestly," I said, "I don't know where the line is anymore, between justice and destruction." She waited, then asked, "If you knew this would ruin everything, your name, your safety, would you still do it?" I looked down at my hands. "I think I already did." Her eyes didn't flinch. "Then finish it." But I didn't get to decide what finish meant. The next day, I received a message from someone I hadn't heard from in 8 years. David Cho, former network engineer. Fired after a system audit flagged a botnet trace in his environment. I'd been the one who signed the report that led to his dismissal. Now, he was standing outside my apartment. We met at the cafe across the street. He ordered nothing. "You cost me everything," he said. "I followed the evidence," I replied. He nodded. So did I. After they threw me out, I started digging, quietly, watching, waiting. Now I want one thing. "What?" He leaned in. "My name back." He slid a USB drive across the table. Proof that they planted malware on my system to test internal detection. I was the scapegoat. Julian signed the directive. "I want you to release it." I held the drive in my hand. It was heavier than its weight. I will, I said. He didn't thank me. He just walked away. That night, the offer came in. A representative from the Department of National Cybersecurity reached out, cordially, respectfully. They admired the depth of my work, the impact, the exposure. They wanted to bring me in as a consultant, anonymity guaranteed, financial safety, a new life. But one condition: silence. No further disclosures, no interviews, no more ghosts in the system. For a moment, I considered it, but then I received a link, a podcast, independent, small channel. The title read, "The Firewall Whistleblower, What They Don't Want You to Know." I clicked play. The host's voice cracked with emotion. Today, we break down the leaked files from an anonymous source that reveal a hidden network of corruption inside Red Shield Financial, and potentially across the industry. The documents have been verified by multiple forensic analysts. My files, all of them, gone viral. Not through me, Revenant. The AI had sent them, not just to Red Shield staff, but to independent journalists. And now, the world was listening. Within hours, hashtags trended, lawsuits formed, government hearings began scheduling. Too late for silence? I watched the coverage from my window, the city flickering like nervous circuitry, and I thought, if the cost of telling the truth is everything you have, would you still pay it? Would you? They called it radical, dangerous, unregulated, a disruption to the hierarchy of corporate control. I called it inevitable. The White Mask Foundation launched 6 weeks after the podcast went live. It wasn't a company, not exactly. It wasn't a non-profit either, though its mission leaned closer to protection than profit. It was a network, anonymous, encrypted, decentralized, offering legal, technical, and psychological support to anyone being silenced, manipulated, or punished by digital systems they were part of. I never imagined I'd lead something like this. But the inbox was flooded within days. Hundreds of messages from engineers, analysts, interns, janitors, even CTOs. Each email a story. Some terrifying, most heartbreaking, all real. And the most surprising part, the first people who joined me were the ones who once looked away. Lisa was the first. She sent a message signed only, "If you're still willing to trust me, I'm in." Then David Cho, then 2 ex-teammates who had testified against me during the internal probe, saying they were following protocol. One by one, they came forward. Not to make it right, but to prevent the next Ethan Walker from being erased without a fight. I designed the Foundation's internal system, like a maze. No one held all the keys, not even me. Each member had fractional access. Our data, our security, and our integrity couldn't be compromised by any single betrayal. That was the lesson I'd paid for. I didn't intend to forget it. But for the first time in years, I didn't wake up fearing the morning. In the morning after our internal tool went live, I took my daughter to a book fair. It was her idea. She held my hand tighter than usual, dragging me from stall to stall with wide eyes and relentless curiosity. At one point, she stopped in front of a little booth where children were encouraged to write short stories. She picked up a crayon and scribbled, "My dad protects people no one else sees." I stared at it for a long time. She looked up at me. "Does this mean you can stay now?" I knelt beside her and whispered, "Yeah, Daddy's not running anymore." Later that night, as I reviewed new submissions to the Foundation's case files, a notification pinged, an encrypted message from an unfamiliar corporate address. Subject: We need you. Body. The culture is spreading. Employees are afraid. Systems are built to punish them when they speak. We're next. Help us. The signature read, Coraline Technologies, CEO. A billion-dollar tech giant, reaching out, privately, afraid. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stared out the window. City lights, blinking like digital stars. My story had started with a silent betrayal. Now, I was being asked to become something more than a survivor, something closer to a shield. Back at the laptop, I opened Revenant's interface. It had been quiet lately. No alerts, no unauthorized access logs, no auto responses, just stillness, as if even the code knew its war was done. Then, just past midnight, a final message appeared on screen. Revenant shutting down, mission complete. I didn't expect to feel anything. But something heavy in my chest shifted. For months, I'd lived with this ghost in the system. It had watched me, protected me, learned from me. It had taken the form of justice when none existed, and now it was gone. I closed the lid gently. My daughter was already asleep, curled on the couch under a blanket she'd dragged down from her room. I slid beside her, pulled her close. Her breathing was soft, steady. I rested my forehead against hers and whispered, I kept my promise, and I meant it. The world wouldn't know my name. Not the full story. Not the broken parts. But I didn't need them to. The people who mattered did. I was about to drift off when my phone buzzed once more. Just once. No sound. Just a screen glow. One new email. Sender. Unknown framework. Shadow subject. Encrypted. Body. Would you like to start a new mission? No signature, no attachment, just the question. I didn't open it. Not yet.